The village went to sleep beside a lake that had never looked dangerous. By morning, almost everyone was dead. On August 21st, 1986, the villages below Lake Nyos in Cameroon settled into an ordinary night. Cooking fires faded. Animals grew quiet. The lake lay still beneath the darkness. Then a deep sound rolled across the hills. Some survivors later compared it to thunder, but no storm had arrived. Minutes later, an invisible cloud began spilling from the lake. It had no flames, no smoke, no warning smell, strong enough to send people running. The cloud hugged the ground and flowed downhill into homes, fields, and sleeping villages. People collapsed before they understood what was happening. Cattle fell where they stood. Birds dropped from trees. And when the sun rose, the landscape looked untouched. No burned houses, no shattered roads. Only silence. Something had crossed the valley during the night, and no one yet knew the lake itself had released it. The first survivors did not know what had killed their families. They only knew they had awakened inside a world that had stopped moving. Some had collapsed for hours. Others woke with headaches and no memory of the night. They walked from house to house calling names, but almost no one answered. Then people from beyond the valley began arriving. What they found made no sense. Homes were untouched. Food still sat beside cold fires. There were no wounds, no signs of fighting, and no ash from an eruption. Yet entire families were gone. Rumors spread immediately. Poison, a secret weapon, a curse from the lake. But one detail troubled investigators. The deaths followed the lowest ground. People in valleys had died. A few on higher slopes had survived. Whatever moved through Nyos had behaved less like an explosion and more like a silent river. When scientists tested the air and water, they discovered the valley had not been attacked. It had been suffocated. The gas had a name. But that only made the mystery worse. Carbon dioxide should have disappeared into the air. So how had it gathered in one place, in enough quantity to kill an entire valley? Scientists tested the lake water. What they found was terrifying. Lake Nyos sat above volcanic ground, and carbon dioxide had leaked upward for years. Cold water and crushing pressure trapped the gas at the bottom, like a bottle being slowly filled. No one could see it. No one could smell it. And the lake gave almost no warning. Then something disturbed the balance. Perhaps a landslide. Perhaps a temperature change. Perhaps the gas itself had finally become too much. Deep water surged upward. Pressure dropped. And the dissolved gas burst from the lake in one enormous, invisible release. It was not lava. It was not smoke. It was the lake exhaling years of trapped gas. But one question remained. If Nyos had done this once, what could stop it from happening again? The disaster was over. The danger was not. When scientists returned to Lake Nyos, they expected the violent release to have emptied it. Instead, the deepest water was already collecting carbon dioxide again. The lake had survived the night, and it had begun reloading. That discovery changed the mission. Survivors were moved away from the valley. Villages near the lake were abandoned. Families were told they might never safely return home. But evacuation could not solve the real problem. Gas was still rising from volcanic ground beneath the lake. Year after year, it would dissolve in the cold water below. Waiting meant rebuilding the same invisible weapon. Scientists needed a way to remove the gas without triggering another disaster. Yet touching the lake could be as dangerous as leaving it alone. One sudden disturbance might release everything at once. So they began designing an experiment, a pipe that would reach the bottom and make the lake empty itself. The pipe was supposed to prevent another disaster, But when the valve opened, the lake exploded upward. In January 2001, engineers lowered a pipe more than 200 meters into Lake Nyos. At first, nothing happened. Then gas-rich water began racing toward the surface. As the pressure dropped, dissolved carbon dioxide expanded inside the pipe, pulling even more water upward without pumps. Seconds later, a violent fountain towered above the lake. For the people watching from shore, it looked terrifyingly similar to the beginning of another eruption. But this time, the gas had only one path: up the pipe, into the open air, away from the villages. The experiment worked, yet one pipe was not enough. Deep below, enormous amounts of carbon dioxide still remained. And while the system slowly drained the lake, a weakened natural dam at the crater's edge created a second threat. If it collapsed, the next disaster would not come as gas. It would come as water. The lake had begun to breathe safely, but the mountain holding it in place was starting to fail. Along the crater rim, engineers found deep cracks in the natural dam. Years of erosion had weakened the wall. If it collapsed, a massive flood could rush into the valley below. This time, the danger would not be invisible. It would arrive as a wall of water, and the villages downstream had almost no warning. The problem was brutal. Lowering the lake too quickly could disturb the gas-rich depths. Leaving it untouched could allow the dam to break. So engineers had to reduce two threats at once, without triggering either one. They strengthened the barrier, improved drainage, and expanded the degassing system. But every storm tested their work. Every new crack raised the same fear. Lake Nyos had already killed in silence. Now it threatened to strike in a completely different way. And until the dam was secured, the people below were still living beneath a loaded weapon. The lake looked harmless again. That was the most frightening part. Years after the night that killed an entire valley, the water was calm. The villages were quiet, and the fountains above Nyos kept releasing gas. No sirens, no flames, only pipes doing the work that silence once hid. For the survivors, there was no clean ending. Some returned to the land they had lost. Others never trusted the lake again. They had gone to sleep beside it as farmers, parents, and children, and awakened inside one of the strangest disasters in modern history. Scientists finally understood what happened. Carbon dioxide had risen from deep volcanic rock, collected beneath the water, and escaped in one deadly breath. At least 1,700 people were gone before sunrise. Today, Lake Nyos is watched, measured, and drained of gas. But it still looks almost exactly as it did before the disaster. Quiet, beautiful, and impossible to fear until you know what happened there.